Captain Lee Daeho stood before the massive crystal doors of the Galactic Coalition Council chambers and tried not to let his hands shake. Behind him walked 3 other humans who represented all of Earth's hopes for joining the galactic community. Dr. Park So-min carried data files about human biology and culture. Commander Kim Tae-woo held military records showing Earth's peaceful intentions. Ambassador Choi Hye-jin had spent months learning coalition protocol and customs. The doors opened with a sound like breaking glass. Inside the chamber sat beings from hundreds of different worlds. Some looked like giant insects with rainbow wings. Others appeared to be living metal that shifted and changed shape. A few resembled jellyfish floating in glowing bubbles of water. All of them turned to stare at the 4 humans as they walked into the center of the room. High Counselor Vexithara rose from her crystalline throne. She stood 12 feet tall, and her body sparkled like cut diamonds in the chamber's strange blue light. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "So these are the creatures from the 3rd planet of Sol system," she said. "They call themselves humans." Lee Daeho stepped forward and bowed as Ambassador Choi had taught him. "Honored counselors, we come seeking membership in your great coalition. Earth offers friendship, trade, and knowledge to all peaceful species." Sound filled the chamber that humans had never heard before. It was the sound of 800 alien species laughing at the same time. The noise made Lee's teeth hurt, and Kim Tae-woo reached for his sidearm before remembering they had been forced to leave all weapons on their ship. "Peaceful," repeated General Noxandra, who commanded the coalition's military forces. His body looked like black smoke given solid form, and his eyes burned like red stars. "Show them the data." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth spinning slowly in space. Then the display zoomed in to show the planet's surface. Lee watched in growing horror as the aliens highlighted every dangerous aspect of his homeworld. "Observe," said Scholar Chinvele, whose voice came from a creature that looked like a walking tree made of metal. "This planet experiences regular seismic activity that splits the ground and releases molten rock. The atmospheric system generates electrical storms with enough power to destroy small spacecraft. Water falls from the sky mixed with chemicals that can dissolve organic tissue. The display showed hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and lightning strikes. Then it focused on Earth's animal life. The aliens watched footage of lions hunting zebras, sharks attacking seals, and wolves working together to bring down elk. The native fauna," continued Chinvele, "includes pack hunters that coordinate attacks, social predators that use tools, and aquatic killers that can sense electrical fields from vast distances. This world should not support intelligent life. It should not support any life at all." Vexithara's crystalline face somehow managed to look disgusted. "According to our databases, this planet Earth ranks as a Class 12 death world. Only 3 such worlds have ever been discovered in our records. No sentient species has ever evolved on a Class 12 death world. It is impossible." Dr. Park So-min spoke up for the first time. "Honored counselor, we did evolve on Earth. We are proof that it is possible. Our species learned to work together to overcome our world's challenges. We developed tools, agriculture, medicine, and eventually space travel. We are not violent by nature, but we are survivors." The laughter started again, but this time it sounded more nervous than amused. Several alien species began talking among themselves in languages that sounded like music or static or the grinding of metal on stone. "Survivors," said General Noxandra, and his smoky form seemed to grow darker. "That is exactly what concerns us. Any species that could survive on such a world must be extremely dangerous. You are predators who somehow developed intelligence. You are killers who learned to build machines." Ambassador Choi stepped forward. "We request that you examine our complete historical records. Yes, humans have fought wars, but we have also created art, music, literature, and philosophy. We have learned to heal diseases, to feed the hungry, and to explore the stars. We come in peace." "Peace," said Vexithara, and her voice now sounded like breaking ice. "Your own records show that your species has been at war for most of its existence. You have weapons that could destroy your entire planet. You hunt other species for food and sport. You are everything the Coalition was created to protect the galaxy from." Lee Daeho felt anger rising in his chest. but he forced himself to remain calm. We have made mistakes in our past, but we have learned from them. Human civilization has grown beyond its violent origins. We offer knowledge and friendship to all who will accept it. The chamber fell silent except for the strange humming that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The alien counselors spoke among themselves using technology that allowed instant translation between hundreds of languages. Lee could hear fragments of their debate. Too dangerous to allow into coalition space. Could contaminate peaceful species. With their violence. Should be eliminated before they spread beyond their system. The rules require a trial period before membership or execution. Yes, the trial. It has worked well for removing other problematic species. Finally, Vexithara spoke again. The coalition has reached a decision. Humanity will be granted the opportunity to prove its worth. Through the trial of proving, you will be given basic supplies and transport to a world where you can demonstrate your peaceful intentions and ability to contribute to galactic society. Ambassador Choi bowed deeply. We are grateful for this opportunity, honored counselor. Which world will serve as our testing ground? The crystalline being's face showed what might have been a smile. The world designated Kepler 442c. It is uninhabited and rich in resources. 23 other species have been tested there over the past 2 centuries. We are certain you will find it most educational. Something in her tone made Lee's skin crawl, but he kept his expression neutral. How long will this trial period last? Standard coalition trials continue until the tested species either proves its worth or fails to survive, said General Noxandra. Previous trials have lasted anywhere from 7 to 47 standard days. The longest was achieved by the Calarian Empire, whose survivors managed to maintain their settlement for 47 days before the local environment proved too challenging. Dr. Park asked, what happened to these other species after their trials? Those who failed the trial were deemed unsuitable for coalition membership, replied Chinvele. They were not seen again. Kim Tae-woo caught Lee's eye and nodded slightly. Both military men understood what was really being said. This was not a trial. This was an execution disguised as a test. The coalition had no intention of allowing humanity to join their ranks. They planned to dump humans on a world so dangerous that no species could survive, and then claim the humans had failed their test. But Ambassador Choi had already committed Earth to accepting the trial. To refuse now would mean immediate attack by coalition forces. Earth's small fleet could not stand against the military might of 800 worlds. We accept the trial, said Lee Dae-ho. When do we depart? Immediately, said Vexithara. You will be provided with 1 transport vessel, basic survival supplies for 30 days, and permission to select 100 volunteers from your species. This ship will take you to Kepler 442c, where you will begin your trial. As the humans were escorted from the chamber, Lee could hear the aliens already beginning to place bets on how quickly the human settlement would fail. The most optimistic estimate he heard was 12 days. Most predicted the humans would be dead within a week. 3 hours later, Lee stood in the cargo bay of an alien transport ship, watching 100 of Earth's best and brightest preparing for what might be humanity's final mission. Engineers, doctors, soldiers, scientists, farmers, and teachers all volunteered to risk their lives for the chance to save their species. As the ship jumped to faster than light speed heading for Kepler 442c, Lee made a silent promise. The aliens expected humans to die on their Deathworld. They were about to learn that humans had already spent millions of years learning how to survive on a Deathworld. Earth had taught them well, and they were about to give the galaxy a lesson in human persistence. The alien transport ship dropped out of faster than light speed, and Lee Dae-ho got his first look at Kepler 442c through the viewing ports. The planet looked like someone had taken Earth and decided to make it as hostile as possible. Massive. Storms swirled across continents that seemed to shift and change shape even as he watched. Lightning flashed constantly through clouds that glowed with strange colors. The polar regions burned with aurora so bright they hurt to look at. Dr. Yoon. Ji-hai pressed her face against the port and studied the surface with professional interest. As Earth's best geologist, she had volunteered for this mission, knowing she might be the key to human survival. Look at those continental plates, she said to anyone who would listen. They're moving so fast I can actually see the drift happening. In real time. The alien pilot spoke through the ship's communication system. Its voice sounded like grinding metal. Prepare for immediate departure. Coalition regulations forbid extended observation of trial worlds. You will be deposited on the surface with your supplies. Good luck, primitive creatures. Dr. Park So-min finished checking the medical supplies one more time while Engineer Oh Kyung-soo ran final diagnostics on their limited equipment. Sergeant Han Min-soo gathered his team of survival specialists and Medic Lim Yoon-ji organized the emergency medical kits. Remember the plan, Lee called out as the ship began its descent through the planet's violent atmosphere. First priority is establishing a defensive perimeter. Second priority is shelter. Third priority is water and food sources. We survive the first day, then we figure out how to survive the first week. The landing was rough. The alien pilot seemed to take pleasure in dropping them faster than necessary, and the transport ship departed within minutes of touching down. Lee watched it disappear into the storm clouds above and tried not to think about how they were now, completely alone on a world that had killed 23 other species. Well, said Commander Kim Tae-woo as he shouldered his pack and looked around at the alien landscape. At least the gravity feels normal. Dr. Yoon-ji-hai checked her instruments and frowned. Actually, the gravity here is 2.3 times Earth normal. We just don't feel it yet because our bodies are still adjusting from the ship's artificial gravity system. Give it an hour and we'll all feel like we're carrying extra weight. The humans had landed on what appeared to be a broad plain between two mountain ranges. The ground beneath their feet felt solid, but Lee could see cracks running in all directions, as if the planet's surface was constantly breaking and reforming. Strange crystalline formations jutted up from the earth like frozen lightning. In the distance, something that might have been trees swayed in wind that carried a metallic tang. Sergeant Han took charge of establishing their perimeter while the scientists began collecting data about their new environment. The first discovery came within minutes of landing when Specialist Kang Hae-won tried to activate their long-range communication equipment. The electromagnetic interference is incredible, she reported. I can barely get local communications, working let alone anything that could reach Earth or even the Coalition monitoring stations. It's like the entire planet is one giant radio jammer. Dr. Nam Junho knelt beside one of the crystal formations and carefully took samples. These aren't natural crystals, he announced after running quick chemical tests. They're some kind of metallic compound that's been superheated and rapidly cooled. The entire surface of this planet must experience regular thermal shock. As if responding to his words, the ground began to shake. Not the sharp jolting of an earthquake, but a slow rolling motion like ocean waves passing through solid rock. The crystal formations sang with high-pitched tones as the planet's surface flexed beneath them. Everyone stay calm, called Lee as several humans stumbled and grabbed for support. This appears to be normal for this world. Dr. Yoon, what are you reading? The geologist had her instruments spread across the ground and was taking readings as fast as her equipment could process them. This is incredible, she said with excitement that seemed inappropriate given their circumstances. The entire planet's crust is in constant motion. It's like Earth's tectonic activity compressed into a single day instead of spread across millions of years. The shaking stopped as suddenly as it had started. In the new silence, Lee could hear something else. A sound like wind chimes mixed with animal calls coming from the direction of the distant forest. Contact, called Captain Song Yoo-jin, who was leading the reconnaissance team. We have movement in the tree line. Multiple contacts moving in coordinated patterns. Lee grabbed his binoculars and focused on the forest edge. What he saw made his blood run cold. Creatures that looked like they were made of living crystal were emerging from between the trees. They moved on 4 legs, but their bodies seemed to shift and phase in and out of solid form. Worst of all, they were clearly working together surrounding the human landing site in a classic hunting formation. How many? Asked Kim Tae-woo as he checked his sidearm. I count at least 20, replied Song Yoo-jin. They're keeping their distance for now, but they're definitely studying us. Dr. Park So-min raised her own binoculars and watched the creatures with scientific fascination instead of fear. Look at how they move, she said. They're using pack, hunting tactics just like earth wolves. But their ability to phase through matter suggests they might be silicon-based life forms rather than carbon-based. Can we communicate with them? Asked Ambassador Choi, who had insisted on joining the mission despite the obvious dangers. I doubt they're interested in conversation, said Sergeant Han as he positioned his team to cover all approaches to their landing site. They're predators and we're prey. The only communication they understand is strength. The crystalline creatures began to move closer. Lee could see now that their bodies were beautiful in a deadly way. They sparkled like diamonds, in the strange light of Kepler's twin suns. Their eyes glowed with internal fire and their movements had the fluid grace of dancers. They were also clearly preparing to attack. Dr. Park, said Lee without taking his eyes off the approaching creatures. You said they hunt like earth wolves. How do we defend against earth wolves? The xenobiologist thought quickly. Wolves are pack hunters, but they're also smart enough to avoid fights they can't win. They look for weakness, confusion, and fear. If we show them we're organized and ready to fight back, they might decide we're not worth the risk. You heard her, called Kim Tae-woo. Form defensive squares, make noise, look big and dangerous. Show these things we're not easy prey. The humans spread out into the defensive formations they had practiced during the journey to Kepler 442c. They banged metal tools against rocks, shouted challenges at the approaching creatures, and stood their ground, despite every instinct telling them to run. The crystalline pack stopped just outside weapons range. Lee could see them communicating with each other through flashes of colored light that ran across their translucent bodies. After several minutes of this strange conversation, the creatures began to back away. It worked, breathed Medic Lim Yoonji. They're retreating. For now, said Sergeant Han grimly, but they'll be back. Predators don't give up on a food source this easily. They're probably just regrouping and planning a better approach. As if to prove his point, the ground began shaking again. This time the tremors were stronger and lasted longer. Cracks appeared in the earth around the human camp, and several of the crystalline formations toppled over with crashes like breaking glass. We need shelter, called Dr. Yoon Ji-hai. These seismic events are getting stronger and more frequent. If we're caught in the open during a major one, we could be crushed or swallowed by the ground itself. Engineer Oh Kyung-soo studied the terrain and pointed toward a cluster of large rock formations about half a kilometer away. Those outcroppings look stable. If we can reach them, we might be able to dig in and create a defensible position. What about the crystal creatures? Asked Captain Song. We deal with them when we have to, said Lee. Right now, our priority is getting to safety before this planet kills us with its geography. The humans gathered their supplies and began moving toward the rock formations in a disciplined column. Behind them, the crystalline predators emerged from the forest again clearly, planning to follow and wait for an opportunity to strike. Above them, the storms continued to rage and the twin suns cast strange shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. As they walked, Lee found himself thinking about Earth. Compared to this nightmare world, his home planet seemed almost peaceful. Yes, Earth had earthquakes and storms and dangerous animals, but at least the ground stayed solid under your feet, and the predators were made of normal flesh and blood. Sir, called Specialist Kang from her position near the rear of the column. I'm picking up some kind of structured electromagnetic signals from underground. It's almost like there's some kind of technology buried beneath the surface. Natural or artificial? Asked Dr. Park with interest. Unknown. But the patterns are too regular to be natural. It's like there's an entire network of something down there. Lee filed this information away for later consideration. Right now, he needed to focus on getting his people to safety and establishing a base camp. Once they had shelter and security, they could worry about the planet's mysteries. Day 30 on Kepler 442c arrived with the usual morning earthquake and a spectacular display of aurora that painted the sky in colors that had no names in any human language. Lee Dae-ho stood at the entrance to their expanded cave system and watched the crystalline predators that had become a constant presence around their camp. The creatures no longer tried to attack, but they hadn't left either. They seemed to be studying the humans with the same intensity that Dr. Park So-min studied them. The coalition monitoring stations must be very confused by now, said Commander Kim Tae-woo as he joined Lee at the cave mouth. Their previous test subjects were all dead by this point. Lee nodded and checked his watch. 30 days of coalition. Supplies had been designed to last exactly 30 days, assuming the test subjects would be dead long before running out. The humans had stretched those supplies to last 40 days through careful rationing and by learning to supplement them with local resources. Dr. Nam Jun-ho had made the first breakthrough on day 12 when he discovered that the crystalline formations contained trace minerals that human bodies could process. The strange metallic taste was unpleasant, but the crystals provided essential nutrients that kept the humans healthy, despite their limited food supplies. More interesting than that, said Dr. Park as she approached carrying her daily research notes. I've been studying the local ecosystem and I think we've been looking at everything backwards. This planet isn't trying to kill us. It's testing us. Explain, said Lee with interest. After 30 days on Kepler 442c, he had learned to listen carefully to Dr. Park's theories. The xenobiologist had an uncanny ability to understand alien life forms. Look at the pattern of seismic activity, she said, spreading her charts on a flat rock. Dr. Yoon discovered that the earthquakes follow predictable cycles. The crystalline creatures time their hunting patterns to these cycles. Even the electromagnetic interference has regular patterns that specialist Kang has learned to predict. So the planet isn't random chaos, said Kim. It's organized chaos. Exactly. And every challenge has a solution if you're smart enough and adaptable enough to find it. The previous 23 species failed not because the planet was impossible to survive on, but because they weren't flexible enough to learn its rules. Specialist Kang Haiwan emerged from the cave depths where she had been working on their communication equipment. I've got good news and strange news, she announced. The good news is that I've managed to break through the electromagnetic interference and establish limited-range communications. The strange news is that the interference isn't natural. Lee frowned. What do you mean? The planet's electromagnetic field is artificial. It's being generated by something buried deep in the crust. Something that's been here for a very long time. The patterns are too complex and too purposeful to be natural phenomena. Dr. Yoon Ji-hee looked up from her geological surveys. That would explain the seismic activity too. I've been tracking the earthquake patterns and they originate from the same deep locations where Kang is detecting the electromagnetic sources. You're saying this entire planet is artificial? Asked Lee. Not the planet itself, said Dr. Yoon. But something is controlling its geological activity. Something is deliberately maintaining the hostile environment. Before anyone could respond to this revelation, Captain Song Yu-jin came running up the path from the lower caves. You need to see what we found in the deep tunnels, she called breathlessly. We're not alone down there. Lee followed Song deeper into the cave system than any human had gone before. The tunnels extended much further than their initial surveys, had suggested forming a complex network that seemed to follow the planet's electromagnetic patterns. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on walls that showed clear signs of artificial construction. Here, said Song as she led them into a large chamber carved from solid rock. We found them yesterday but wanted to be sure before reporting. In the center of the chamber huddled a group of beings that definitely were not human. They were small, only about 4 feet tall, with gray skin and large eyes that reflected the human lights like mirrors. They wore the remains of what had once been advanced technological clothing, but was now patched and repaired with materials that looked like they came from the planet's surface. They're survivors from one of the previous trials, said Dr. Park, with amazement. The Coalition claimed all previous test subjects died, but these beings have been living here for decades. One of the survivors approached cautiously and spoke in a language that sounded like musical tones. Specialist Kang activated her translation device, and after a few moments managed to establish basic communication. They call themselves the Yithrak, she reported. They were sent here for trial 67 years ago. Their original group was 300 strong, but only 12 survived the first year. These 7 are all that remain. How have they survived so long? Asked Lee. Kang translated the question and listened to the response. They learned to work with the planet instead of fighting it. They say the electromagnetic patterns carry information. The seismic activity can be predicted and even controlled if you know how. The crystalline creatures aren't really predators, they're guardians. Guardians of what? asked Dr. Park. The eldest Yithrak spoke at length while Kang struggled to translate complex concepts. They say this planet is a testing ground built by an ancient civilization called the Architects. The Architects wanted to create the ultimate survivors by exposing different species to controlled but extreme challenges. Those who passed the tests were meant to inherit the Architects' technology and become protectors of the galaxy. Lee felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. The Coalition knows about this. That's why they keep sending species here. They're not trying to eliminate threats to galactic peace. They're trying to prevent anyone from passing the test and claiming the Architects' inheritance. But they miscalculated with humans, said Kim with growing understanding. They thought Earth was a Class 12 death world because they don't understand that we're already the product of millions of years of surviving on a testing ground. Dr. Yoon examined the chamber walls with her geological instruments. If these Yithrak are right about being able to control the seismic activity, then we need to learn their techniques immediately. The Coalition rescue mission should arrive within the next few weeks. Rescue mission? Asked Song with suspicion. That's what they'll call it, said Lee grimly. When the monitoring stations report that we're still alive after 30 days, the Coalition will send ships to evacuate us. Except they won't really be planning to evacuate us. They'll be planning to finish what the planet was supposed to start. Over the following days, the humans worked intensively with the Yithrak survivors to learn the secrets of controlling Kepler 442c's hostile environment. The process required a combination of technology and biology that pushed human adaptability to its limits. Engineer Oh Kyung-soo learned to tap into the planet's electromagnetic grid using modified human equipment combined with Yithrak knowledge. The power available was incredible enough to run a small city if properly harnessed. Dr. Yoon discovered that the seismic activity could be directed by placing harmonic resonators at specific points in the underground network. With careful timing, it was possible to trigger earthquakes in chosen locations while protecting other areas. Most remarkably, Dr. Park established genuine communication with the crystalline creatures. The beings were indeed guardians created by the Architects to test potential inheritors. They had been evaluating human behavior since the first day, looking for signs of intelligence, cooperation, and ethical behavior. They've decided we passed their test, announced Dr. Park after her first successful long conversation with the creature pack leader. They're offering to teach us advanced survival techniques and to help us defend against the Coalition forces. Can we trust them? Asked Kim. They've had dozens of opportunities to kill us over the past month, replied Dr. Park. If they wanted us dead, we'd be dead. I think they've been protecting us from other dangers we don't even know about. As if to prove her point, one of the crystalline beings approached the cave entrance. Up close, Lee could see that its body was incredibly complex. What had appeared to be simple crystal was actually a sophisticated network of living light that pulsed with information. The creature spoke to Dr. Park in a series of harmonic tones that seemed to come from inside Lee's head rather than through his ears. She listened carefully, then turned to address the group. It says that Coalition ships have been detected at the edge of the system. They'll arrive here within 2 days. It also says that the Architects left specific instructions for what to do when worthy inheritors were finally found. What kind of instructions? Asked Lee. Dr. Park smiled. The kind that turn a testing ground into a fortress. This planet isn't just designed to create ultimate survivors. It's designed to give those survivors the tools they need to reshape the galaxy. That night, Lee stood watch at the cave entrance and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Coalition ships were approaching, expecting to find either human corpses or broken survivors begging for rescue. Instead, they would find humans who had not only mastered a death world, but gained allies and technology beyond Coalition understanding. Day 67 brought the Coalition rescue fleet into orbit around Kepler 442c. Lee Dae-ho watched their approach through the enhanced sensor array that engineer Oh Kyung-soo had built, using a combination of human technology and architect systems discovered in the deep caves. The fleet was massive, 47 ships ranging from small scouts to massive battle cruisers. Far more firepower than would be needed to rescue 100 human survivors. They're not taking any chances, said Commander Kim Tae-woo as he studied. the tactical display. That's enough force to glass the entire planet's surface. Good thing we're not planning to be on the surface when they arrive, replied Lee. The past month had transformed both the humans and their understanding of Kepler 442c. Working with the Yithrak survivors and their crystalline guardian allies, the humans had unlocked secrets that the Coalition had spent centuries trying to suppress. The planet was not just a testing ground. It was a training facility designed to create a new generation of galactic protectors. Dr. Park So-min approached carrying her latest research files. Her appearance had changed dramatically over the past weeks. Exposure to the planet's unique electromagnetic fields had enhanced her ability to communicate with alien life forms. Her eyes now carried flecks of the same crystalline light that marked the Guardian creatures. The Guardians report that Coalition advanced scouts have been scanning the surface, she said. They're confused because they can't detect any human life signs in the expected locations. Because we're not in the expected locations anymore, said Dr. Yoon Ji-hai with satisfaction. The geologist had spent weeks learning to control the planet's seismic systems. Under her guidance, the humans had moved their entire base of operations into the Architect City that lay buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface. The ancient city was a marvel of engineering that made Coalition technology look primitive by comparison. Vast chambers carved from living rock contained manufacturing facilities that could create anything the inhabitants needed from raw materials. Transportation tubes allowed instant movement across continents. Most importantly, defensive systems that had protected the city for millions of years still functioned perfectly. Specialist Kang Hai-wan monitored Coalition communications from a control room that gave her access to the planet's entire electromagnetic grid. They're trying to establish contact with any human survivors, she reported. Standard rescue protocols. They want us to signal our location so they can send down rescue shuttles. How long before they give up on the nice approach and start bombing? Asked Captain Song Yoo-jin. According to Yithrak historical records, said Ambassador Choi, who had become the primary liaison with the survivors. Coalition forces typically wait 72 hours for response to rescue signals. After that, they declare the test subjects dead and begin sterilization bombardment. Lee nodded. That gives us 3 days to complete our preparations. Dr. Nam, how are the weapon systems coming along? Dr. Nam Jun-ho looked up from a complex piece of architect technology he was studying. The manufacturing facilities are incredible. They can analyze any device and create improved versions using materials I've never seen before. The defensive weapons should be ready within 48 hours. And the crystalline allies? Asked Lee. Dr. Park smiled. They're more excited than I've ever seen them. They've been waiting for 67 years to have a species pass the full test. They're ready to do whatever it takes to help us succeed. Yithrak Elder approached and spoke in the musical tones his species used for communication. Specialist Kang translated. He says the architects left specific instructions for this situation. When worthy inheritors are found and threatened by corrupt galactic powers, the planet's full defensive capabilities are to be activated. What does that mean exactly? Asked Kim. The Yithrak Elder sang a longer passage filled with complex harmonies. Kang listened carefully before translating. It means Kepler 442c isn't just a testing ground. It's a weapon. A planet-sized weapon designed to protect the worthy and eliminate those who would prevent galactic evolution. On the second day, Coalition patience began to wear thin. General Noxandra himself led a squadron of heavy assault ships into the planet's atmosphere. The ships spread out in standard search patterns looking for any sign of human settlement. From the safety of the underground city, Lee watched the Coalition forces through sensors that could track individual life forms across the entire planet surface. The aliens had no idea they were being observed by the very people they thought were dead. Time to give them something to find, he said. Dr. Yoon activated the seismic control system she had mastered. Deep beneath the planet's surface, ancient mechanisms stirred to life. Carefully controlled earthquakes began reshaping the landscape in real time. Mountains rose from plains while valleys opened where none had existed before. To the Coalition, forces above it looked like natural geological activity. They're getting frustrated, reported Kang as she monitored Coalition communications. Their sensors keep detecting artificial structures, but every time they investigate the structures, have vanished or moved. The architect city was demonstrating capabilities that the Coalition had never imagined. Entire sections could be relocated through the planet's interior in minutes. Manufacturing facilities could create perfect decoy installations on the surface, then dissolve them back into base materials when no longer needed. On the third day, General Noxandra lost patience completely. Coalition forces began preparing for systematic bombardment of the planet's surface. If they could not find the humans, they would simply destroy everything until the humans were certainly dead. "They're charging main weapons," reported Kang with tension in her voice. "Time to let them know we're still here," said Lee. Specialist Kang activated the planetary communication grid that the humans had learned to control. Every Coalition ship in orbit suddenly received the same message broadcast on all frequencies, simultaneously. "Coalition forces, this is Captain Lee Dae-ho of the human settlement on Kepler 442c. We are alive and well. We have completed the trial period and request immediate recognition of humanity's right to Coalition membership." The response was immediate and exactly what Lee had expected. General Noxandra's voice filled the communication channel with barely controlled rage. "Impossible. No species survives more than 47 days on that Deathworld. You are either lying about your location, or you have discovered technology that violates Coalition law. We have discovered the truth about this planet and about the Coalition's so-called trials," replied Lee calmly. "We know about the 23 species you murdered here. We know about the survivors you left to die. And we know about the architect inheritance you've been trying to prevent anyone from claiming." Silence filled the communication channel for several minutes. When General Noxandra spoke again, his voice carried the cold certainty of someone who had made a final decision. "The human contamination will be eliminated immediately. All Coalition forces are authorized to use maximum firepower. Nothing on that planet is to be left alive." The bombardment began 30 seconds later. Energy beams that could crack continents lanced down from orbit. Fusion bombs that could vaporize cities exploded across the planet's surface. For 6 hours, Coalition forces poured enough destructive power into Kepler 442c to sterilize a dozen worlds. When the bombardment finally ended, the planet's surface was a smoking wasteland of glass and molten rock. General Noxandra personally led the survey mission that descended to confirm the elimination of human contamination. "Scan complete," reported his aide, after they had circled the devastated planet. "No life signs detected. The Deathworld elimination protocol has been successfully implemented." "Excellent," said General Noxandra. "Record this as another successful trial. The humans failed to survive the testing period and were eliminated by natural planetary hazards. As the Coalition fleet prepared to depart, the planet's electromagnetic grid came alive with power levels that made their instruments scream warnings. Dr. Yoon's voice filled every Coalition ship simultaneously, speaking through the planetary communication system with the authority of someone who controlled a world-sized weapon. "Coalition forces, you have just committed an act of attempted genocide against a species under architect protection. The penalty for this crime is immediate judgment." The planet's surface began to crack open like an eggshell. Massive towers of crystalline metal rose from the depths, carrying weapons that had been built by a civilization older than the Coalition itself. Energy fields that could manipulate gravity and time locked onto every Coalition ship, preventing their escape. "This is impossible," gasped General Noxandra, as his flagship found itself trapped by forces beyond his understanding. "This is justice," replied Lee Dae-ho as he emerged from the architect city in a ship built from technology that made Coalition vessels look like primitive toys. Behind him came a fleet of human and Yithrak pilots flying crystalline fighters that phased in and out of normal space. The Battle of Kepler 442c lasted less than an hour. Coalition forces found themselves fighting an enemy that could appear anywhere, attack from impossible angles, and disappear before retaliation was possible. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442c, the galaxy had become a very different place. Lee Dae-ho stood on the observation deck of the architect station that now orbited the transformed planet and watched as ships from dozens of species arrived to join what they were calling the Free Species Alliance. Each ship carried refugees, survivors, and representatives of civilizations that had been oppressed by the Coalition for centuries. The station itself was a marvel that demonstrated how much humans had learned from their architect inheritance. Built from the same crystalline metal as the guardian creatures, it could phase between dimensions, expand or contract as needed, and serve as home to millions of beings from wildly different environments. Dr. Park Soman had designed the biological systems that allowed species with completely different atmospheric and gravitational needs to live and work together. The Coalition Council has requested another meeting, announced Specialist Kang Hai-wan as she approached carrying the latest diplomatic communications. Her role had evolved from simple communications officer to chief coordinator of interdimensional messaging systems that allowed instant contact across galactic distances. "What do they want this time?" asked Commander Kim Tae-woo, who now served as military coordinator for the Alliance fleet. Over the past months, Coalition forces had tried 3 separate attacks on Alliance territory. All 3 had ended in complete defeat, with captured Coalition ships being converted to Alliance use and their crews offered the choice of imprisonment or joining the fight for galactic freedom. "Same thing as always," replied Kang. "They want us to return all captured Coalition technology, stop accepting refugee species, and submit to Coalition authority in exchange for being allowed to keep Kepler 442c as an independent human world." Leek laughed. "And what did you tell them?" "The same thing we told them last time. We counteroffered to accept their complete surrender, the liberation of all oppressed species, and the establishment of a new galactic government based on consent rather than fear." Through the observation windows, Lee could see the latest addition to the Alliance fleet. The ship had arrived 3 days ago carrying survivors from the Calarian Empire, the species that had previously held the record for surviving longest on Kepler 442c at 47 days. It turned out that the Coalition had lied about their extinction. The Calarians had actually passed the architect test but were declared dead to prevent them from claiming their inheritance.
"How many Coalition member species have requested secret meetings about joining the Alliance?" asked Dr. Yoonji Hai as she joined the group. The former geologist now served as Director of Planetary Engineering, helping Alliance worlds adapt their
environments to support refugee populations. 47 at last count, said Ambassador Choi Hee-jin, who had become the Alliance's chief diplomatic coordinator. Most of them are terrified of Coalition retaliation, but they're even more terrified of being left behind as the balance of power shifts. The balance of power was indeed shifting dramatically. Alliance technology based on architect designs had proven superior to Coalition systems in every possible way. Alliance ships could travel faster, fight better, and support larger crews than anything the Coalition could field. More importantly, Alliance manufacturing could produce these superior ships faster than Coalition forces could destroy them. "The real question," said Lee, "is what we do when the Coalition finally admits they can't win through military force and tries something more desperate." His answer came sooner than expected. Captain Song Yu-jin materialized on the observation deck using the personal transportation system that all Alliance officers now carried. Her expression was grim. "We have a problem," she announced. "Coalition forces have just attacked the Rigel system. They're not trying to capture it. They're sterilizing it completely. Every planet, every moon, every space station. They're committing genocide on a scale we've never seen before." The group fell silent. The Rigel system contained 12 billion beings from 6 different species. It was also one of the Coalition's most loyal member systems, completely uninvolved in the conflict between the Coalition and the Alliance. "They're sending a message," said Kim with cold anger. "They're saying that any system that even considers joining the Alliance will be completely destroyed." "How long before they reach total sterilization?" asked Lee. "At current rates, about 18 hours, replied Song. "The population centers are already gone. They're working on the orbital habitats. Now," Lee made a decision that would echo across galactic history. "Signal the fleet. All available ships are to jump immediately to the Rigel system. We're going to stop this genocide and show the galaxy exactly what Alliance protection means." "Sir," said Kang with concern, "the Coalition has committed over 300 ships to the Rigel operation. Our entire fleet is only 67 ships. Numbers don't matter when you have superior technology and a cause worth dying for, replied Lee. Signal Dr. Park and Engineer O. Tell them to activate the Architect combat protocols. It's time to show the galaxy what humans learned on their Deathworld. The Alliance fleet that jumped to the Rigel system 2 hours later looked small compared to the massive Coalition armada that was methodically destroying every trace of life in the system. But appearances could be deceiving when dealing with Architect technology. Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched as Coalition ships turned to face the Alliance force. Through his enhanced senses courtesy of Architect biological modifications, he could feel the terror and confusion of Coalition crews as their sensors tried to analyze ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Open a channel. To all Coalition forces, he ordered. General Noxandra's image appeared on the main screen. The alien commander looked haggard and desperate. 6 months of defeats had aged him visibly. Captain Lee, he said with forced calm, you are too late. The Rigel system has already been sterilized as punishment for considering alliance with your rebellion. Turn back now, or share their fate. General, replied Lee with ice in his voice, you have 30 seconds to order your forces to stand down and begin rescue operations for any survivors. After that, we will consider you and every ship under your command to be legitimate targets for immediate destruction. You fool, snarled Noxandra. We outnumber you 5-1. Your rebellion ends here. You're wrong about that, said Lee, as he nodded to Dr. Park. The xenobiologist activated systems that transformed the Alliance fleet from 67 ships into something that defied every law of physics the Coalition understood. Each ship suddenly split into dozens of semi-independent components that could fight as individual vessels, or combine into larger configurations. The crystalline guardians that had become part of every Alliance crew revealed their true nature, as living weapons capable of phasing through enemy shields and disabling ships from the inside. But the real surprise came when Dr. Yoon activated the gravitational manipulation systems she had learned from studying Kepler 442c's geological controls. Suddenly, Coalition ships found themselves trapped in localized gravity wells that made maneuvering impossible, while Alliance vessels danced between them like leaves in the wind. The Battle of Rigel lasted 43 minutes. When it ended, 237 Coalition ships had been captured, disabled, or destroyed. The remaining Coalition forces surrendered when they realized their weapons could not even target enemies that existed partially outside normal spacetime. But Lee's greatest triumph was not military. In the 18 hours following the battle, Alliance rescue ships saved over 4 billion beings from the wreckage of their destroyed worlds. Using Architect terraforming technology, the Alliance began construction of new habitable space stations that could house the refugees while their homeworlds were rebuilt. This is impossible, whispered General Noxandra as he stood in the cargo bay of Lee's flagship, watching Alliance crews perform rescue operations that violated everything he thought he knew about the limits of technology. No one can rebuild destroyed planets. No one can bring back sterilized ecosystems. You're thinking like a member of a species that never had to survive on a Deathworld, replied Dr. Park, as she directed the biological restoration of an entire moon's ecosystem. Humans spent millions of years learning to adapt to impossible conditions. When you gave us access to Architect technology, you gave us the tools to make the impossible routine. The aftermath of the Battle of Rigel marked the beginning of the end for the Coalition. Within weeks, 17 major systems had declared independence and requested Alliance protection. Coalition member species that had spent centuries in fear suddenly realized they had an alternative. High Counselor Vexithara arrived at the Architect station 3 months later carrying a formal surrender document. The crystalline being who had once dismissed humans as primitive killers now stood before Lee with something approaching awe. We underestimated your species completely, she admitted, as she signed the treaty that dissolved the Coalition and established the new Galactic Cooperative. We thought Earth was a death world that had somehow produced violent primitives. We never imagined it was a training ground that had produced the galaxy's future guardians. Lee accepted the surrender with grace, but without satisfaction.